Explorer of the Seas is one of Royal Caribbean's oldest cruise ships, and that means this cruise can either feel like a great value or a pretty big disappointment, depending on what kind of cruiser you are. This ship first sailed back in 2000, so in 2026, we're talking about a ship that's been around for about a quarter of a century. So the big question is simple. Is Explorer of the Seas still worth booking today? After sailing on Explorer, my answer is just not a yes or a no. Some things genuinely surprised me in a good way. Some things absolutely reminded me that this was an older ship. And there are a few things I think you should know before spending your money, especially if you're comparing Explorer to one of Royal Caribbean's newer ships. So in this video, I'm going through what surprised me about Explorer of the Seas, where the ship still works, where the age shows, and who I think should actually book it in 2026. If you're new to the channel, I'm Brad. My goal is to help you get the most out of your vacation with honest trip reviews, guides, and real-world tips. If you'd like more videos like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. Let's dive right in. The first thing that surprised me is that Explorer still feels like a real Royal Caribbean ship. When you hear that a ship is more than 2 decades old, it's easy to picture something that feels worn out and stripped down, but that was not my first impression. The Royal Promenade still gives the ship a strong center. You have bars, shops, food, events, and people moving through it throughout the cruise. It's not Central Park, it's not the boardwalk, but it still gives Explorer that classic Royal Caribbean feeling. And the ship still has plenty of recognizable Royal Caribbean features. There's an ice skating rink, flow rider, pool deck, solarium, mini golf, and even some water slides. So I didn't leave the ship thinking there was nothing to do. Most of the time, Explorer still felt very active. It still felt fun, and it still felt very much like a Royal Caribbean ship. Explorer, of course, is not the newest, biggest, flashiest Royal Caribbean ship, but if you want a classic Royal Caribbean cruise at what is hopefully a better price than the newer ships, this part of Explorer still works. Now with that said, Explorer does not feel new. For me, this ship showed its age, especially in the cabin. I stayed in a spacious ocean view balcony cabin, and the extra space was definitely nice. The room felt comfortable enough, and having that larger layout did help. But the design also reminded me pretty quickly that this is an older ship. The bathroom especially felt dated. Some of the finishes felt older, the outlet situation was not what you'd expect on a newer ship, and there were practical things where you could tell this room was designed for a different era of cruising. But of course that did not ruin the cruise, but it does affect how I'd think about the price. If you get a good fare, it's easier to approach this knowing the room is a little dated. But if the price starts getting closer to a newer ship, those details really matter. This is also where packing smart helps. On older ships, things like a cruise-approved USB charging block can make a real difference, especially if you're used to newer hotels or newer ships with outlets and USB ports pretty much everywhere. So the cabin was fine, but I would not book Explorer expecting a modern room experience. Book it because the itinerary, price, or overall cruise makes sense. Then go in knowing that the cabin may feel older in ways you'll definitely notice. Now, Explorer is missing a lot of what Royal Caribbean's newer ships are known for. There's no aqua theater, no Central Park, no boardwalk, no giant neighborhood concept where different parts of the ship feel like completely different destinations. There are fewer restaurants, fewer entertainment spaces, and less of that new ship wow factor. And if that is why you book Royal Caribbean, Explorer is going to feel like a step down. But here's what surprised me. I did not spend the entire cruise thinking about what Explorer didn't have. Most of the time, I was still having a good time. That's the key distinction. A ship can be missing the newest features and still be fun. The question is whether those missing features actually matter to you. If you mostly just want a pool deck, some entertainment, a few good bars, ocean views, fun ports, and that classic Royal Caribbean energy, Explorer will definitely deliver. Explorer is not bad because it's older, it's just a ship where you need to know what you're giving up. One thing I liked about Explorer is that it still has more of a classic cruise ship feeling. Newer megaships are amazing, but they can also feel like floating resorts where the ocean almost becomes background scenery. Explorer felt a little more straightforward. It was easy to get around, and on a shorter cruise, I appreciated not having to walk forever just to move between dinner, the cabin, the theater, and the pool deck. The ship still has indoor spaces, bars, entertainment, and places you'll recognize like the schooner bar. But it does not feel like it's trying to be 5 different vacation concepts at the same time. And for some people, that's going to sound like a negative. But for others, it may be exactly what they want. There are also moments where an older ship can feel more connected to the ocean. We had forward views, outdoor decks, quieter corners, and places where you're not surrounded by giant attractions at every turn. And that surprised me. If you want non-stop spectacle, Explorer probably won't impress you the way Royal Caribbean's newest ships will. But if you want something manageable, classic, and still fun, there is value in that. Food is another area where expectations are going to matter. Explorer has enough options for a shorter cruise. You've got the main dining room, Windjammer, Cafe Promenade, and specialty options like Giovanni's, Chops, Izumi, and Johnny Rockets. On a newer, larger ship, you'll sometimes have so many options you'll struggle to try them all. So if food is a huge part of your cruise experience, I'd pay attention to this. For me, the dining was okay, but somewhat mixed. Some things were fine, some things worked great, and some things did not blow me away. Giovanni's, for example, was one of those meals where I had to ask whether the upcharge really felt worth it on this specific ship. I wasn't too impressed. Overall, for a short cruise though, I think Explorer has enough food options for most people, and the main dining room really delivered. But I would not book this expecting the dining variety or polish of Royal Caribbean's newest ships. Here's what I wish I knew before booking Explorer of the Seas. First, I would book this ship for the right price, but not at any price. This is probably my biggest takeaway. Explorer makes the most sense when the fare reflects that it is an older ship. If you're saving a meaningful amount compared to newer Royal Caribbean ships, I get the appeal. But if the price is close to a newer ship with newer cabins, more dining, bigger entertainment, and more updated spaces, I would compare it very carefully. Second, don't expect a bad ship just because it's old. This was my biggest pleasant surprise. Explorer still has a real Royal Caribbean feel, and with the right expectations, it can still be a very fun cruise. Third, pay attention to your cabin. The cabin is one of the places where age is going to stand out the most, so category, location, and price will matter. Fourth, plan around the crowds. A little timing can make a big difference on this ship. And fifth, be honest about how much you really care about the newest Royal Caribbean features. If you've never sailed on one of the newer mega ships, you may not care that Explorer does not have those things. But if you sailed Oasis or Icon class ships and love the neighborhoods, entertainment, dining, and the wow factor, Explorer may feel like a noticeable step down. So who should book Explorer in 2026? I think Explorer is a good fit for value-focused cruisers. If the price is right and you want a Royal Caribbean cruise without paying new ship prices, this ship can make a lot of sense. It's also a good fit if you care more about the itinerary than the ship. I also think it can work well for first-time cruisers. If you've never sailed Royal Caribbean's newest ships, you may not spend the whole cruise thinking about what you're missing. You might just enjoy the promenade, the pool deck, entertainment, bars, ocean views, and the ports. And that is a perfectly valid way to cruise. Now, who should think twice? I would think twice if you're booking Royal Caribbean, especially for the newest features. If your dream cruise involves the Aqua Theater, Central Park, the boardwalk, the newest cabins, huge entertainment, and tons of dining choices, Explorer is probably not going to give you that version of Royal Caribbean. I would also think twice if you're very sensitive to older cabins. And I would be careful if you're traveling solo, since Explorer does not have the same solo-focused setup you might find on some of those other ships. So my final verdict, is Explorer of the Seas still worth booking in 2026? My answer is yes, but it is a price-sensitive yes. If you get a good fare, like the itinerary, and go in knowing this is an older Royal Caribbean ship, I think Explorer can still be a really good cruise. It still has that classic Royal Caribbean feel. It still has enough on board to keep the trip fun, and in some ways, I actually appreciated that it was a little more straightforward than the newest mega ships. But I would not overpay for it. If Explorer is priced closer to one of those newer Royal Caribbean ships, I'd start comparing very carefully, and not because Explorer is bad, but because at that point, you're going to be giving up newer cabins, more dining options, bigger entertainment, and more modern ship features without saving enough money to make that trade-off worth it. For the full cruise experience, including more of the ship, the cabin, and the day-to-day trip, I'll link my full Explorer of the Seas review here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on board again soon.